Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 50th edition of Coffee with Ashish. And today we've got a very special guest with us, Abraham Malapat, who's the President and Group Head, Marketing, Service Quality, Value Added Services and Innovation, Thomas Cook India Limited. But before we get into conversation with him, I just wanted to share with all of you that today is the 50th edition of our show, and in fact, this is the last episode of season one. We'll be coming out with season two over this weekend, and we have been so fortunate and lucky to have the support of the past 50 industry leaders who have been on this show and shared all their wisdoms and learnings with all of us, and we feel really grateful and humbled. In fact, I've got a small collage which I wanted to show that all these industry leaders have been with us, and I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to thank all of them who have been with us, and we are really thankful for their presence onto our show.
A
Coming
big
to
round
the
of applause for the 50th thing. I think it's a landmark event.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you so much. And I think talking about today's session, it's an extremely interesting one because Abraham, we have had on this show people from we've got domestic travel intermediaries, we've got international travel intermediaries, we've looked at OTAs, we've looked at meta search engines, niche players working in adventure tourism or doing sort of aggregator business, B2B, B2C, venture funded, self funded, going for IPO and whatnot, right? So we've got a wide variety of this motley group who's been on the show. But I think it's really interesting in terms of where Abraham comes in around the experience of communication, branding, marketing. And I think in many of the conversations we recollect, and especially for many of the startups with whom we have had conversation, who always talk about how difficult sometimes it is to differentiate your messaging and communication in travel, because ultimately everybody is selling sort of in travel. And Abraham, as a confession, I come from outside travel, right? So when I came here 10 years back in travel business, I realized that nobody really owns anything. Somebody is selling something, and then somebody else receives you at the airport in someone else's car.
That's a serious accusation.
So that was very scary for me, to be honest, that this is a very interesting business model where it's all about messaging and communication, but ultimately there is limited control over the entire value chain because there are so many stakeholders and contractors and subcontractors in the value chain that it's very difficult sometimes as a brand facing organization to even commit on certain elements of service assurance and quality, because there is so much going in the back kitchen, right? And many startups have discussed with us some of the challenges around creating a compelling marketing and positioning strategy in light of not being taken as a Me Too product, even when they are raising funding. And in fact, I've got some of the cartoons as well which sort of relate to some of these instances, wherein bottom left one is something I really like, where, and this I have seen in many conversations in travel, no offense, it's meant to be in a jest, where you really don't have a differentiating product. Sometimes everybody's using the same technology, booking engine, now you have got chatbots and whatnot, and even the same destination, same type of products. And ultimately it comes down to marketing and communication being the only differentiator in many ways in terms of how people perceive the value proposition which you are offering to them. And not to mention the right side, where you got all these retargeting ads whenever you search something, and they just keep following you until you really book that destination or package you were looking for. But I think on a more serious note, we really look forward to in today's conversation in terms of how not only startups but even established brands like yourselves can make sense of a smart marketing and positioning strategy, creating a compelling value proposition for the end customer to make sure that the messaging and positioning is right. And guys, who better to help us in this conversation and drive this dialogue forward than Abraham. Abraham, as many of you might be aware of, as I said, is the president and group head, marketing, service quality, value added services and innovation, Thomas Cook India Limited. His mandate is basically to spearhead Thomas Cook's group's entire foray into new businesses, new product development that help drive business growth in near term and build opportunities for sustainable growth of the company. As head of marketing and innovation, he also leads group brand building efforts, PR, corporate communication, and also key trade relationships, and also supports and grows individual lines of business within the existing and emerging opportunities. He also, as head of the customer service, also closely aligns with service quality team and business teams to ensure pre, during trip, and post trip experience for the Thomas Cook's customers. Thomas Cook India, as we know, beside Thomas Cook, also has brands like SOTC, TCI, Tita, and another brand which we're all aware of. As an overall group, it's got more than 6,500 employees around the world with revenues of excess of $1.34 billion few years ago. And the group has also invested in various organizations like Quest Corp and others. And I think Abraham himself looks very young, but he's got more than 25 years of experience in the travel industry across brand building, advertising, brand communication, PR, and customer centric marketing, from ideation to end process execution, and MarTech as well, which is a key hot topic now. He has also worked in senior management teams with some of the largest and well-known agencies like Ogilvy, Web Startup Solution. He has also been part of a leading asset management firm which does mutual fund. And the experience goes on and on, right? And in his current role, he is also cut across. I think one of the interesting things which we really look forward to hearing from you, Abraham, is that you're not only in marketing, right? You've also taken care of service quality assurance, value-added services, innovation, martech. So end to end. So you're not somebody who will only commit to what can be delivered. You are also responsible to ensuring that that's delivered consistently by the organization. So I think that's really interesting. And one last point before I introduce him, apart from work, he's also been instrumental in setting up and currently serves as the CEO of Fairfax India charitable organization that that is working upon its journey of national dialysis initiative aimed at enhancing sustainable, free, affordable dialysis in remote areas of the country. They have installed more than 520 free-to-use dialysis machine across 98 centers spread across 16 states and delivered more than 400,000 free dialysis sessions for needy patients. And I'm sure you all know how expensive dialysis can be. So I think apart from work, it's really interesting to see you also taking up individual social responsibility apart from CSR, which probably Thomas Cook takes up. So we're really privileged to have you with us, Abraham. With this, a very warm welcome to you on our show. And with this, I'm going to hand it over to Ashish to have a conversation with you while I sit back and enjoy my coffee.
Yes, thank you.
How's your coffee, Abby?
Yeah, good. Particularly flavorful today.
Yeah, let me also add to the viewership here of your enthusiasm for fitness and how many number of marathons you might have done. I don't know. You would know yourself.
So I'm wearing a Thomas Cook running T-shirt right now.
Right. Yeah. So as a marketing supremo, let's look at the whole COVID situation as a marketing man in totality, and then specifically to the travel industry. What's the impact? I mean, what's your overall thoughts on this?
Thank you, Ashish. First of all, congratulations on the 50th anniversary, and thank you for having me, Karthik and Ashish. First off, before I respond to your question, Ashish, I just want to sort of react to something Karthik said at the introduction. I fundamentally disagree that there is no differentiation in the travel space. It's a bit like saying everybody in the banking industry is doing the same thing and there's no differentiation because the currency is money, right? In the travel industry, the currency is destination, but fundamentally as a service provider, each of us are different. The way we sort of build products around the destination, the experiences, the quality of service, the personalization, the kind of value addition that can be offered, all that fundamentally are opportunities for differentiation. And I think that's really where we should focus our conversation on, because the smaller we make ourselves in mentally and saying, fundamentally everything is the same, I think there's a risk that we don't really tap the potential of what we are capable of. So I just want to set that at rest, because I think there's a risk of thinking small, and I think a risk of thinking that everything's the same and there's no opportunity for differentiation. So Karthik, I'll have a long conversation with you around that to emphasize that point. But there's a big risk with sort of generalizing that everybody does the same thing. It's a bit like saying hotels are all the same. They just give you a room and a bed, right? Fundamentally, then all services are the same. Sorry, to your question, coming to the impact of COVID-19, I think my lifetime, your lifetime, I think in the last 125, 26 years, I don't think the world has seen anything like this. Nothing has brought the world to its knees like the global pandemic has. So in the sort of modern world or interconnected market, so to speak, I don't think a phenomenon like this is witnessed. And I think to that extent, it's fair to say that there is no rule book. There are no sort of no empirical evidence about what works and what doesn't. We're all learning by the day what the impact is. We think it's X today, it's X plus something tomorrow. So I think across industries, there's been a significant impact, whether it's a demand level impact or a supply level impact. And in many industries like travel, which are at the forefront of the impact, it's been a demand and supply impact, right? Both have come to a screeching halt. And that obviously causes significant challenges for anybody as a marketer, because you can deal with one at a time. Demand level challenge, there are X amount of rules to bring demand back. Supply level challenges, there are Y opportunities to sort of moderate or bring back supply in a limited supply, maybe premium price it, whatever, and sort of get back on track. But when both come to a screeching halt, is obviously something that no marketer has ever been trained to do. But that's, and of course, not only is the travel business at the front end or the front line of the impact, it's also likely to be one of the last to fully recover, because and that's a bit of a sort of double-edged in that sense. So yeah, I think the unpredictability of it is the other big thing, because as management people, as leaders, we're all trained to sort of plan with timelines. So there's a 1 month target, a 3 month target, there's a 6 month target, there's an annual target. You make budgets, you make plans, you resource for it, you plan for it, and then you track to it. But all this is with a philosophy that you are in the unit of time, and the variables are largely to will vary within a certain degree of this. In this instance, because of the unpredictability of the business itself, and when in some sense you're going to likely deal with it completely, I think that has posed an even more significant challenge, because the time frame now is hazy. We don't have a time frame, and which is a frame of reference we're all used to. So yes, I think it's been as much unlearning and learning as one can imagine and hope for. It's not something that most people would wish on their enemies, but I think it's fantastic learning. I think there's a great opportunity for all of us in every industry to sit down and do the things we haven't done before, because for the first time, the regular train has stopped, and we have time to look around and figure out on this new journey, this new normal is often touted. And I think at Thomas Cook and at the group at large, I think that's really what we've done. We've sort of taken stock, reimagined every business, every process, every team, and actually refocused on technology and what it will take to get back in the new normal. And re-emphasizing the contactless processes right across foreign exchange and travel. The tie-up with Apollo for the assured end-to-end safety program encompassing our partners and vendors. All these are things that in traditional times we probably would not have done. And of things, from getting into COVID, certification for travelers and so on. And I think that to a large extent is really what the opportunity is as well, to stop, take stock and look at the new opportunity.
Right. You talked about budgets and quarterly and 6 monthly and annually. Of course, corporate teams have always sat down and advocated and challenged the zero budget concept, starting from base and upwards. And here's really in a position where you're starting from a zero level budget. It's all come down to that. But coming back, it has also obviously thrown up opportunities, which you just designed, that you're re-looking at various processes and technologies. And so let's just fundamentally look at the opportunities in the business area. And when do you think really the recovery will happen in terms of, again, coming back into budgeting years, perhaps?
Sure. So I think first is one has to get a sense or define what recovery means. Is there a meaning? I'm what I like to believe an optimistic realist. So and I see two trends, and both are at play here. Okay, to my mind, the first and most visible is the fact that I think individuals and societies and governments are coming to terms with the fact that we will have to coexist with this virus, right? And I think that's visible in the phenomenon that we call unlocking, and the fact that industries are actually opening up. For example, the announcement of restaurants as well to open up today, and so on. So we are actually seeing that phenomenon, and I think most people are now alive to the fact that they have to capture or recapture some semblance of normalcy. And to that extent, with all reasonable precautions, we are seeing those things come back into play. And I think that's a good thing in a way, because no visible silver bullet is on the horizon. There is no either magic treatment or vaccine that's anywhere close to commercial production or availability. So let's face it, I think we're all adults in the room. We have to deal with it. It is what it is. We've dealt with it for many months now. Lockdown is not necessarily a long-term answer. We know that the economic costs are very high, and the economic costs may be even greater than the medical costs in some sense at a national or global scale. So we have to sort of get back to economic activity, and we're seeing that across industries. And I think governments and leaders across the world are cognizant that they have to manage this transition into the new normal. And again, this is the optimist in me speaking, we have never seen a global collaboration at the scale and momentum that we have to battle this pandemic. So obviously the most visible is the medical and R&D side, but I think we are seeing collaboration across the world. And I don't think human endeavor has come together in one united form to come up with a cure or treatment as we have now. So we have multiple vaccines in fast track in various parts of the world, various stages of testing, and so on. And I'm fairly confident that sooner rather than later, we will have some viable, treatment or vaccine, or both, ideally. But that said, I think the first has already kicked in. All of us I was at work today, right? And we've been at work in at least 2 days a week for a while. Our shops have been open since July. In fact, our foreign exchange offices opened as part of the essential things way back in May. So I think in stages, we're all getting back into this thing. The fact coming to close to travel, we've seen people start booking not just nearby holidays, which obviously we started seeing a while back with drive holidays and so on. We're starting to see big bookings for travel to Goa and Rajasthan and Himachal for Diwali, for Christmas, for New Year, and of course into 2021. We've seen bookings for Dubai, Maldives is doing well. So to my mind, I think travel is coming back along with the other industries. Your question was really about opportunities and what are the opportunities that this throws up.
Yeah.
And to my mind, I think this is a time when organizations, whether in travel or otherwise, that have built technology at scale with a view to keep pain points or contact points minimal, right? They would have started with the idea of keeping pain points less, making it convenient, making it faster, making it more efficient. But today, that's got a whole new facet of advantage. It's completely contactless and seamless. And I think transactions, especially services that have built for contactless by accident in the instance I explained, are actually at a huge advantage, because they will be able to largely at least do the transaction processing much faster. Companies that have built processes for managing this financially or otherwise are at an advantage. Companies have invested fast when this pandemic first hit in terms of preventive safety, reassurance in terms of insurance and other vehicles, especially for travel, and finally have built systems for ensuring financial safety and reassurance, I think is the other opportunity. And I'll use our own instance because it's the easiest for me to talk about.
Right.
Our mantra internally at the Thomas Cook Group is what we are calling assured, insured, and secure. Yeah. Right? Assured because of the Apollo program. This is really about prevention, because today the opportunity and the threat are side by side. The threat is that people are scared to travel. The opportunity is the person who has the strongest argument of insurance has the best chance of convincing the customer. So our Assured program is really going out there as a leader and saying, we've tied up with the leader in healthcare in India, Apollo, and we've built a complete rule book and an SOP from at every stage of travel, from inquiry, booking, right up to return home, covering all our vendors and partners to ensure every possible aspect of prevention is taken care of. So that gives you a high degree of reassurance and is vetted and endorsed by Apollo. The second is the insured part. And this is really about building a top-class insurance product. And we've done this in partnership with ICICI Lombard to ensure that you have comprehensive insurance with up to your full cover valid for COVID hospitalization. So this ensures that even, God forbid, you do fall ill, and this can happen even if you're at home and not traveling, you're fully insured and covered. And last but not least, in today's world, I think everybody's apprehensive about, listen, should I make travel plans, block money? Tomorrow, if there's something happens, my travel gets canceled, my money is going to get stuck. There are enough horror stories of refunds not being made and so on. So our secured piece, or secured promise, the third leg of the stool, as we call it, is the fact that we are reassuring customers that, listen, your money is safe, right? Whether it's free scheduling, free cancellation, and most importantly, guaranteed refunds. So I think these are things that, again, going to our first thing about sitting back, looking at what this new normal entails, and looking at the new reality and what customers and people like us are dealing with in the context of travel, and saying, okay, listen, what can I go out there with that will actually help address it and reassure them? Because this is not just about dealing with an immediate future. This is possibly a medium to reasonably long-term future as we look ahead without a definite cure in sight. The other thing I think is that we're definitely seeing an opportunity for curated travel, especially offbeat, especially non-urban experiences. So we're talking about, wildlife. We're talking about hidden gems. In fact, we have a range of products that we launched recently called Hidden Gems. These are really boutique places, 17th century forts. India's full of them. And so far, a lot of these boutique properties were reserved for inbound tourists, right? They were not catering to domestic tourists. Suddenly those have opened up, right? And these are top-notch, truly unique experience. So I think, and no offense again meant to Karthik, but I'm saying these are the opportunities for differentiation, because in the very same Goa, there's a 17th century fort where you can have a completely different stay experience and, an experience like no other. No two rooms are the same. So what I'm trying to say is that, there's so much in this country and there's so much that can be done, even at an experiential point of view. There's so much of food and so much of discovery of culture. And I think domestic tourism is in for a huge, huge surge, right? I think people are yearning to travel, and because their options are restricted and they're, sort of constrained in terms of mobility, and may be hesitant to take a flight right now, though they could theoretically do. I think the discovery of their own states, the discovery of neighboring states, and India's absolutely incredible art, culture, tradition, history, and excellent hospitality opportunities are actually going to see a big discovery by Indians. People who, visited 20 countries in Europe but never saw the neighboring state are actually going to discover the neighboring state. And mind you, they are spending top dollar. This is no longer about domestic tourism that's, cheap hotel and, half-day sightseeing kind of stuff. This is about serious discovery. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity for people who build for it. And I think we are seeing some of that, and we are gearing up for that in the short term.
Well, that's pretty comprehensive. And I think in the end, we will see a very safe, very hygienic, and a very comprehensive domestic product emerging, which of course will woo in the infrastructure investments and generally grow the landscape in totality. But coming back to the nature of the industry we work in, which is highly fragmented, do you see consolidation happen? Do you think people, either the product end or the consumer end, getting in together? A loosely formed alliance, if not a proper M&A?
For sure, meaning it's logical in the sense that when there's prolonged pressure than just short-term liquidity on any industry and constricting demand and supply the way that the pandemic has for travel, it's bound to create pressure and filter the sustainable businesses and models from the others. So there's definitely, meaning the most candid answer to your question is almost certain that there's going to be consolidation. The companies and models that don't have sustainable resources, that don't have processes that will see them through, that don't have technology that can weather contact scalable normal that we're dealing with now are going to this is going to clean up the so what shall I say, travel landscape to a large extent. I think it's going to separate the fittest, and it really is going to be about those that have the most sustainable model, the most robust risk management and strong leadership that are built for for a fair degree of shock and have the kind of resilience to weather the storm. For sure, also have promoters and directors and boards that are sort of have the confidence in their management and leadership to actually see through this. Because on the other side, for sure, is going to be a much cleaner, far more consolidated, formally and informally sort of industry. You know that pre-COVID and pre-pandemic, this was an industry which is probably the most competitive because there were no entry barriers. Anyone could enter the industry. Right. There was no regulator. Capital investment was minimal. Anyone with an internet connection and and the willingness to learn a little bit was in business, right? So I think today that has changed. I think it will require a whole different set of things, and I think the ability to not just focus on one aspect of travel services, but actually be able to cover the whole gamut, right? So for example, our foreign exchange business being as big as travel is actually one of those things that's really stood us in good stead because it has started business earlier with things like remittances and other things. We've actually bounced back much earlier than just the outbound travel. Domestic travel, of course, is another instance in point. Corporate travel has restarted to a large extent. So I think, those are the definite things that are going to create consolidation. Right. But I think the looser alliances, Ashish, you referred to it, I think is going to my mind, is also going to be an opportunity. It's going to be an opportunity because as long as you're complementing competitors, direct competitors, this is now going to drive collaboration, or should logically drive collaboration like never before. Because we will now have to, in the travel industry or otherwise, look at ways to create superior customer propositions without necessarily resort to discounts which are non-sustainable. So the way to do that, to my mind, is really about building collaborations where you can build complementary offerings that actually aggregate or add up to a superior value proposition for customers, so that the customer gets the a greater deal without necessarily one player or industry bearing the entire brunt of that offer.
Sure. I mean, I've always felt there's been a sort of competitive bloodbath in the same source market, same customer fighting for the same space. And meta searches adding to the confusion, if I may say. But coming back, although you've outlined the strategy, your vision, but instinctively on the consumer behavior, what's the fundamental change you see? I mean, there is obviously safety, hygiene factor, all that comes, but what's one fundamental change in the consumer behavior you see?
To my mind, we are going back to our most primary instincts, right? And I'm meaning, if you look at psychology, which underlies all management theory, I think as humans, when we are faced with perceived danger or threat, we revert to our most primary instincts. And two of those primary instincts are very, very visible today in various forms. The first is fear or uncertainty. And that's really, a fundamental of all living beings is self-preservation. Right? So we're seeing that uncertainty play out. So obviously the most visible is the physical. So fear of infection, mask, distancing, paranoia, not wanting to travel, all that. Which again, we said to some extent, people have sort of over time sort of reconciled with and are beginning to sort of step out a bit. But that's still very, very visible. And that was the first and most visible sort of change in behavior. People who yearn for social contact were moving away from social contact, right, as a result, which is completely, anti-human in some sense because they're social beings. Uh, and the uncertainty and the pandemic at a larger level have caused other forms of uncertainty as well, because now suddenly everything that you thought you had under control, your job, your office, your maid at home, your driver, suddenly all these things you couldn't take for granted, right? Suddenly they couldn't come, you were doing housework, your driver stopped coming, you were driving or not going anywhere at all because you didn't want to drive, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying a lot of those things have changed, have fundamentally altered our thinking processes. So that's very visible. The second is the sort of uncertainty about the future, right? And this is not helped by the fact that most businesses have been impacted, targets have not been met, people have been laid off and continue to be laid off. There's a migrant crisis. You turn on the paper or look at the newspaper, digital or otherwise, it's largely bad news, right? Or was largely bad news for a long time. Right. So all this adds and plays on most people's mind. So it just makes you more insecure. Last but not the least is the financial uncertainty that all this brings about. So you're not sure about, am I going to get ill? Do I need to hospital bills and so on? Second, I'm not sure if, the economy, my job are secure. And last but not the least is therefore, do I have enough money? Do I need to save? Now, this is the, in a way, the most economically damaging. Because when you have this thing of saying, listen, I cannot spend on what I would normally do without blinking, or what is considered normal, we are holding back or cutting back on things we wouldn't normally. I think this is a lethal mix. So this is for sure one big change, the fear and uncertainty and our sort of the way we deal with it on these three facets. The second, and I think this is also a very human this thing, when we are under threat, we resort to the pack, right? As mammals, as this thing, we look for pack support, right? And our packs are family, our packs are friends, our packs are team at work, our packs are leaders at work sometimes if you have that kind of relationship. And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing, the yearning, and this again is sort of accentuated by the fact that you've not been able to visit friends and relatives for a long time. You find the value for human relationships that I think for a long time we may have taken for granted as well, right? You always thought you could go and visit this friend in town. Your old school buddy has been in town and you've been intending to meet him for, let's say, 3 months before the lockdown. And suddenly you couldn't see him for 3 + 6 months. It's 9 months. And now you're like dying to see the guy, right? Suddenly he is your best buddy. He's even closer than you ever thought he was. So I'm just trying to make light of it. But what I'm trying to say is fundamentally is that we have rediscovered the value of human relationships, friends, relatives, family, friends, colleagues, teammates. We want to go to office. I cannot tell you, Ashish, how happy I was when our office reopened and I went back. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd actually say this. I actually did, right? We waited for the weekend when we could go to work every day, and now we were actually waiting for the office to open to go back. So I think this is the other big change. So from a marketer standpoint, I think this again creates an opportunity for travel because private journeys, the thing of sort of getting back with family, doing something new, go somewhere as a family, reading the relationship, I think is again a huge a group of strangers to a large extent coming together. Here you're actually going to see friends and extended family and maybe family and friends, sometimes close friends coming together, They are confident that they are all infection-free and safer. They're more comfortable with each other. Smaller vehicles, smaller groups can actually curate itineraries. Again, an opportunity.
Right. Somebody actually told me that, I can handle social distancing, but not emotional distancing. So perhaps somewhere it gets down to doing that. And that emotionally, if we distance ourselves. But lastly, of course, before I ask Karthik if he has something to communicate here, but what about communications of B2C brands? I mean, have they changed the way they communicate to their customers?
Yeah, so to all I've said earlier, I think if marketers, especially travel, which is part of this conversation, aren't alive to the fact that there is a new set of concerns and priorities for prospects, that we'll have to deal with the uncertainty, fear, and fear at the preventive stage, the what-if stage, and finally the financial insecurity piece. So I think as marketers, we'll all have to learn to communicate these before we get to selling the way we used to sell. It was really about, so many days, so many these things include what the price and whatever offer is offering is not open at all until you pre-sell the category. We have to sell the reassurance and confidence of programs of prevention, of safety if something happens, and of reassurance. In fact, one of the things we've just launched is actually a doctor on call service with Apollo again, where you actually have a doctor on call 24/7. Again, these are things that fundamentally we may never have done in a non-pandemic era. But these are things that I think as marketers we'll have to do. And I think the marketers that are able to sort of think this through and build the most comprehensive, holistic proposition addressing these concerns, because again, and I'm linking every problem to an opportunity. Today, I think the opportunity is also that customers no longer are penny pinching. They are willing to pay top dollar if they have the reassurance of a better quality hotel, which is likely to be better, sanitized, clean, etc. They are not penny pinching in terms of quality of travel, better airline, better vehicle, better driver, better hotel, and kits for protection and so on. So I think that is also something that is going to create an opportunity for larger marketers, premium products, etc. Because as long as it's backed with commensurate expectations, matching the expectations of safety and hygiene, I think the customer is going to be less demanding of discounts and price seeking as much as they are about reassurance.
Right. Well, great insights coming from you, Abhi, and on such a momentous journey on Coffee with Ashish. So let me have Karthik conclude this back. Karthik, you have something to?
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. Great to hear your perspectives, Abraham. And I think it's fair enough that some of the challenges which you mentioned are obviously the opportunities, and they actually become the differentiators, like you rightly said. How in a similar broad category of a commodity, how you can still create differentiation. I think last, just if you can get some thoughts from you around. So we have a lot of startups who are our audience. So if you can get some 2 lines from you in terms of what do you advise to some of these startups who are trying to innovate in the travel ecosystem? What would be your 2 cents of advice to them?
See, it's just like it is challenging for existing players who have large scale operations and large costs and things like that. It's a completely different set of challenges for travel startups. So in this environment, I think my call is actually collaboration. Look at collaborating, and I'm happy to offer our hand as partners. I'm happy and open to collaboration. People with the right ideas, the right technology, and the right willingness to come in with literally skin in the game, where skills and advantages can be leveraged on both sides. If you have the tech, the know-how, the solution, We have the scale, the contracting, the capability, the brand, the marketing. I think this is a time for us not to look at, share of pie, because if the pie is so small or the pie is getting smaller, it makes no sense fighting who gets a larger share. I think the focus should be on sustainability and growing and collaborating and playing to strengths. And I am happy for the travel ecosystem to consider this a great opportunity, because it's also posed to my mind a fair degree of challenges to existing players who may not have considered that their solutions as viable. But if their solutions are in line with new normal or can quickly adapt to the new normal, I think suddenly they'll find themselves in demand, because a lot of the older players may not have the time to develop a solution of their own. So I think, to my mind, it opens up an avenue if they can tweak their product or service to be more relevant, to the travel industry in the new normal.
Yeah.
Right, and I think collaboration is the name of the game. Ashish also very strongly provocates this, that online companies, new age tech companies, and traditional companies who are big players should all collaborate and complement each other. So I think on that note, we're at end of today's session, and also this season 1 of Coffee with Ashish. So big thanks to you, Abraham, for being with us on this special occasion. And we'll be starting our season 2 on Saturday, October 3. So it's going to be again a power-packed season running till January.
In the OTT scene, if the last episode of the last season is not good enough, you don't get the season. So I hope when you have a sounding second season.
Thank you, Abhi. Thank you for
Thank you so much,
being here with us.
Abraham. Thank you everyone for joining.
Bye.
Thanks, Ash.
Yes.
Yeah.